You can't get into a car and put a destination into a GPS without knowing what your destination actually is. And when you build a house, nothing can get off the ground until you pour a foundation. For business coach Liz Wolfe, she spent more than 2 decades helping people get unstuck in entrepreneurship and build abundant businesses. And if you ask her the secret to success in business, she'll tell you it all starts with a unifying and defined vision of purpose, direction, and unity of understanding of the direction you're trying to go. She's the author of 2 books, Your Business Vision Blueprint and The Power of Asking. Wolfe says that in business and in life, you can't be afraid to ask for what you want and making sure to hold those people in positions of power to account until they follow through and work with you to achieve your goals. She joined me this week to have a conversation about building a blueprint in business, building abundant businesses, and business diversification. I'm Kevin McShann. Let's have this conversation. Well, Liz, it's wonderful to see you this afternoon. It's great to start my week with you, and I want to welcome you to the program, and I'm super excited to learn all about your journey in business this afternoon. Great to see you, and thank you so very much for being here.
Well, thank you, Kevin, for inviting me, which it was wonderful to receive that invitation.
Yeah, Liz, I'm super excited to dive into your business story because I know you got your entrepreneurial start on a sheep farm in western Pennsylvania. So I'm wondering if you can tell me all about it.
Absolutely. I love to tell this story. And it's interesting because right before we recorded this, I actually was on, I now am coaching a woman that I knew from those days. Her family had a pig farm. My family had a sheep farm. And we were talking about how our early years of training, growing up on the farm, was really about how to make money out of nothing. Because when you live on a farm, we had products. We spun wool. We made sheepskin clothing, and we would go to festivals and fairs, and we would make even bread and things like that. But sometimes you would just go out and pick berries and make some pies and sell those pies. So it really gave us a powerful understanding of how you can make money from nothing. And I think that's one of the ways that trips people up was they do their own entrepreneurial launch is they feel like, oh, I really need to know what the product is. I really need to know what I'm selling. And they don't leave a lot of room for creativity. And I feel like I got a very strong foundation of how to creatively create products and do things that would have us give money. Because sometimes people would just come to us and ask us, can you make me a coat, or can you make me what can you do for me? And I did that from a very young age. My mother bought this farm when I was 5 years old, and she had never been a farmer before. She had never done anything like that. And we went to this farm and bought these sheep and started making and selling these products.
Fascinating, and I know you went from a western Pennsylvania sheep farm to New York City. So tell me how you got from the farm to the Big Apple. I'm curious.
Well, both related to food, right? Farm, apple, a little bit. So, well, I went to college in Connecticut, and even though we were farmers, my dad was actually a Westinghouse engineer. So we had a strong foundation of get your education. So we all went to college. I have two older sisters. We all went to college, and I went to college in Connecticut. And when I was done with which by the way, I went for photography, which didn't have a whole lot to do with entrepreneurialism at all. And I never pursued photography because of exactly that, what I was just saying. You know, when they talk a lot about being an artist, but they don't talk a lot about how to make a business or how to earn money. It's a huge gap in our college experience, helping people in the arts and other things to actually know how to run a business. So I had to learn that on my own. I came to New York City because it just seemed like the place to be. And I met my husband, who worked with me. He quit his job and came to work with me now 25 years ago. And I just love being in the city because there's so much opportunity here. That being said, I still love being in nature. So we have a place upstate that we go to so we can get out and be in nature as well. But I went from Pittsburgh to Connecticut, and then I came down to New York City.
Well, I tell you, you've certainly been around the gamut, and I tell you, there's nothing like returning to your roots, huh?
Yeah. Well, my husband is a Queens, New York native, so he's never lived anywhere else but in New York City. He went to college in Long Island, but he's always been in this area, so I've had to introduce him to other parts of the world because I love to travel too.
Well, there's nothing wrong with being cultured, absolutely. And I know you have a business with your husband where you help people get unstuck so that they can build and grow abundant businesses. So I'm wondering if you can tell me about it.
Yes, absolutely. So the business that I started with my husband it was a technology company. We're selling CRM systems. So CRM is customer relationship management. It's a way of putting sales systems and marketing systems into technology. And when we started in 1996, that was like new technology. No, people weren't. Now everybody knows about Salesforce. They know about. But at that time, there were very few products. And so we did a lot of learning about helping people to create systems. Eventually, I got bored with the technology part of it, and I found that I was much more interested in coaching young, meaning new entrepreneurs, not just young people, but people that are new and starting their business. And so I eventually dropped the technology. He still does that. He still sells CRM systems. We have people that work with us. And at the same time, I focus solely on helping people with their business. Now, new entrepreneurs have a lot more experiences of feeling stuck than people that have been around for a while because they're not familiar with what it's going to take to create and run a business. And so I always say that if my mother had someone like me, when she was learning about how to be an entrepreneur on the farm, we all would have done a lot better with how we were working. So I bring all of that knowledge to the coaching relationships I have.
Yeah, experience is the greatest teacher, isn't it?
Yes, it really is.
And Liz, I'm also curious to ask you if you have a business motto that you live by or a philosophy in business you think is most prudent to your success?
So really, yes, I definitely do. And a lot of the coaching that I do comes from a place of abundance mindset. We can always make distinctions in the choices that we make of whether we're making that choice from a place of abundance or a place of scarcity. And this is one of the great joys that I have in working with people, is helping them to make those distinctions, because that's really what coaching is all about. That's what making good business decisions is all about, making distinctions. So the first thing that I always help everybody do is to figure out what is their vision. You cannot create something unless you know what it is that you want to create, right? You don't just get in your car and start driving west. Some people do, but typically you'll put into your GPS, I want to go here, and then you'll start driving or use a map or whatever you do to get there. So you have to know your destination. But then you also need a plan. You need to know the roadmap of how to get there. But once you're in action, then often you will run into what I call the hidden barriers, or the mindset issues. I'll give you an example. I was talking with with a woman who's a new entrepreneur, just starting out. She's been working with me for about 6 months, and she was saying how it felt like she wasn't making enough progress. She was kind of like, am I going to fail at this because I'm just not making the progress that I expected? And I said, yeah, because when you imagine how something is going to be when you start it, and the reality of how it is when you actually do it, are two different things. And those types of, like, am I going to be good enough at this? I have some insecurities, imposter syndrome, is this good enough? All of those, am I failing? Those are what I call the hidden barriers, that once you get into action, then you feel like, oh, this isn't working. And that's when people get stuck. And the way to get unstuck is to realize this is part of the process. The value of doing these actions is so that you can bump up against and therefore work through some of these mindset barriers you have.
And Liz, tell me, what do you think is the most common way that a new entrepreneur gets stuck when they first start their business?
Yeah, well, one of the major ways is thinking that you have to make progress, like that you haven't gotten far enough. So I hear people using words like, I haven't made any progress, or I feel like I'm moving backwards, and all of the metaphors or analogies are always about like this idea that you're on a journey and you're making progress and you're climbing the mountain, and then you get to the summit of the mountain. And what you find when you get to the summit of a mountain is that there's other mountains. So first there's a mountain, then there's not a mountain, then there's another mountain, so the idea we have that we should be going at a certain pace, that there's a place where I should have gotten to by now, I feel like that really works against us. So I reframe that, and I want you to think more like you're building something, you're building a house. So each action that you take, you're building the foundation, you're building a wall, you're painting the wall, you're putting the windows in, whatever it is, whatever analogy you want to use, because if you, at least then you can feel like, oh, I see it being built, versus I'm never getting to the end of this journey, which just goes on and on and on and on. I think it's an unfortunate way that we've tricked ourselves into thinking we're not doing as well as we could be.
Wolfe says, for individuals with disabilities to succeed in business and in the workplace, they have to come equipped with an aggressively assertive mindset.
Well, here's one of the things that I think throws a lot of people off, which is the idea that my success is outside of me and dependent on other people's, what they can offer me. So I'll give you an example. People will often say, it's not what you know, it's who you know. And so if you have this idea that, well, I just don't know the right people, or I don't know how to get to the jobs that I want. Another example would be like a certain demand on your efforts and time, like time management and working really hard. or to have a certain amount of experience. So what I like everyone to know is that you don't get opportunities, you create opportunities. And one of the ways that you create opportunities is by asking for them. And so this is one of the principles of abundance that I use in all of my coaching and all of the different trainings that I do, is you will create a lot more results if you are clear about what you want, which is the vision part, and you ask for what you want. And people are not that good at asking, actually. Even if you are, it could be more complicated. So you need to get specific about what it is that you want and ask for it. I would imagine, I'm not personally disabled, and I don't have anyone in my family immediately who is, but I would imagine that it must be hard sometimes thinking that people have to make accommodations for you to ask for what would work for you. Would you say that's accurate?
Yeah, one of the most frequently asked questions when I worked with individuals who were looking for jobs were they wanted to know if they needed to disclose the fact that they actually had a disability, because they thought that might be a disadvantage when they applied for jobs. So absolutely.
Yeah. And what do you tell people when they say that? What's your advice for them?
Well, for me personally, whenever I've applied for jobs, I always try to go up front and tell the employer right off the bat, because I figure if I'm upfront and honest with them from the beginning, they don't know what they can't help me unless they know, right? So I always tell people to celebrate the fact that they have a disability in the sense that they can help business people solve problems faster, or looking at operations from a different and more inclusive perspective.
Yeah, I think it's very similar. Even for people who, like, I'm going to go back to the new entrepreneurs niche, which is people often feel like, oh, I don't have enough of fill in the blank. I don't have enough experience. I don't know enough people. I don't have enough money. They fill in this, I don't have enough, and then. So I would imagine that I could see feeling like, well, if you have a specific disability that would require you to work in a particular way, that could look like a deficit in the face of whether you're trying to get a job or start a business and get clients. And so again, I always want to look to, I can always make an impact, and have I really researched all the ways I can do that? And what I mean by that is, again, I go back to the asking powerfully. Have I really asked clearly for what I want? Have I made clear that I can do the job, or that I'm up for the task of you being my client, etc.? But have I asked for the support that I need or want? Have I been clear about that communication? Now, there's more to that, I want to say, because asking isn't the only part. There's also giving, and there's also receiving. And again, I would imagine, like all of us, sometimes it's hard to receive the support or the help, and to not feel like, there's some ways in which we feel like we have to overly make up for whatever we perceive our shortcomings are. And I don't buy that. You don't have to overly make up for anything. I think that's natural. I do it sometimes, like letting people go talk past the 60 minutes that we are allotted for our coaching call, because I feel like I really want to give them value. But you don't have to overly make up for things. You are valuable, and you're providing value, and so that's really all you need to be focused on.
Yeah, absolutely. And Liz, you brought this up in your last answer, but I'm also curious to ask you about abundant businesses and the principles you use to sort of guide people and make sure that their businesses have a chance to flourish.
Yeah, so as I mentioned, I, I like to make the idea of abundance as the foundation of a business. And what's interesting about all the marketing programs that I do, people will say you have to present your business and the problem you're solving for people using the words that those people would use. And I struggle with this sometimes because people do not ever come to me and say, excuse me, I want to create an abundant business. Nobody ever says that. They say things like, I want more money, or I want to create time or financial freedom. They don't say that. So it's a little bit, marketing wise, it's not that great to say, I want to create an abundant business if I'm explaining to people what I do. But it's very important to me to keep that phrase in what I tell people I do, because it's so critical to be able to distinguish your scarcity-based thinking from your abundance thinking. I'll give you another example. I have a woman who, a client of mine, who sells items on Amazon. And she actually has a much bigger business selling. She has a store, she sells totes, she sells, she's a much bigger business. And so somebody bought something from Amazon. She was like, "Oh, now I have to go to the post office." And it's funny how, like, even though money is coming to her, there's a way in which the scarcity-based thinking would be, "Oh, I have to sell these little products online because what if my big products don't sell?" That's an example of scarcity-based thinking, which would show up in her inaction of going to the post office and sending out this package. Now, if it was a $500 item, she probably would have right away gone to the post office to send it. When we come from not just that I need to know the right actions to build my business, but I need to have the right mindset to have my business, because if I have a scarcity-based mindset, I will never feel fulfilled in my business, because I will always not have done enough. I always won't have enough people that I know. I always won't sell enough. I'll always not have enough time. You see where all those conversations come in and have me feel like, even though I'm working really hard, I'm not creating success.
Yeah, absolutely. And I know you work with people to sort of break the habit of procrastination as well. I'm reminded of something my mother tells me all the time. Why put something off that you can do today until tomorrow? So I'm curious in that lens to ask you about how do we get out of the habit of procrastination in your opinion?
Okay, I have a very simple solution to procrastination. I didn't say it was easy. I just said it's simple. Okay? And the answer to that is, people often have the wrong impression as to why they are procrastinating. A lot of times we assign things like, I'm lazy, or I'm not motivated, or I'm not that good. I'm not good at time management. We don't understand. I have clients who don't bill their clients, so they don't ever do their invoicing. Well, you're not getting money if you don't doing that. So every time I am procrastinating, and or somebody that I'm speaking to is procrastinating, you can ask yourself a question. What am I resisting? There's something about this that I am resisting. For my client that didn't want to take the package to the post office, she was resisting it's kind of boring, right? It's not the exciting part of your business. the part where you have to go find the item, find a box, put it in the box, put the peanuts in the box, tape the box, put the label on the box, get in the car, drive to the post office. That's boring. And what am I resisting? How boring it is. It's not fun, it's not exciting. Administrative tasks are often the one we procrastinate on because they're not that interesting. I'd much rather talk to a client than sit down and write a follow-up email to somebody. That's boring. So that it might be boredom, it might be avoiding, it might be something else, the reason. But you have to ask yourself, what am I resisting such that I am not doing this task right now? And if you switch your thinking from explaining it with circumstances or calling yourself names like lazy, and instead ask yourself that simple question, you will learn what you're resisting, and then you will be able to take action because you can understand it better.
Yeah, absolutely. And Liz, I know you've written 2 books. You referenced The Power of Asking, but you've also written the Business Vision Blueprint. I'm wondering if you can tell me about the books and what they're all about.
Absolutely. So the Business Vision Blueprint, again, these books are what they call short books. You can read them in under an hour, and that's a category in Amazon. So they're self-published on Amazon. And what I do a lot of webinars or master classes on different topics, and one of the ones I did was creating your business vision blueprint. And so in this book you can take yourself through the process that I take my clients through in figuring out what is your business vision. Because a lot of times people just go, they almost fall into business, they have an idea, they don't really have a good vision. So that book will help you to do that. And then The Power of Asking is the first of the 3: asking powerfully, giving wholeheartedly, and receiving graciously. So eventually there will be 3 books, but the most impactful is The Power of Asking. If you read the book and take on the practice of asking powerfully, by powerfully I mean specifically. For instance, don't ask for a salary range, ask for the number you want, because people are always going to give you the lowest of the range, right? For example. So getting specific about what you want, and then all the ways in which we avoid asking and the reasons we avoid. And you will immediately see an impact in what you can create just by asking for it.
Yeah, absolutely. And Liz, you got your business on your major business start, as you mentioned before, by working with your husband initially. So tell me about that dynamic and how it's been so successful for you.
Well, the one thing that I will say that, first of all, I love my husband dearly. He's a fine, upstanding citizen, as my aunt used to say. He's a doer. He's very accountable. So he's like a pillar. Okay, I'm like the creative bee that flies around that pillar. So we complement each other on what we do. I'm sort of the HR marketing side, and he's the accounting sales side. And he never had any entrepreneurial experiences until he met me. I only ever had entrepreneurial experiences. I grew up on that farm. I came to the city. Yeah, I had some jobs, but mostly I was a freelancer. And so I only had that mindset. So I convinced him to quit his job where he was a salesperson selling for someone else to come and sell with me and sell the software. Because he has a very technical mind, it was a good fit for him. So one of the ways in which it has been really successful is each of us finding the area where we excel and then working together on that. So that's been his strength in selling and my strength in bringing the community experience of the employees and the outside community and our clients, customer service together. And as I mentioned, we no longer work, our businesses are different now. Like, he doesn't work with my clients, I don't work with his clients, but I still need him for accounting, he still needs me for HR and marketing, so we still work together. And he's just an all-around nice guy.
Well, as we say in my house, Liz, that teamwork makes the dream work, right?
Right. That's right.
And Liz, I know when you're away from the office, you enjoy playing the ukulele and you do a little bit of singing. So I'm wondering, how do you define fun?
Oh, wow. I am all about singing and playing the ukulele. If you don't know how to play the ukulele, everybody in this world who might be listening to this, all I have to say is, you are musical. There isn't a human being on this planet that's not musical. One of the reasons why I love the ukulele is because it's actually very easy to play. And I want to actually share how I got started playing the ukulele.
Yeah,
because
absolutely.
it relates to this conversation we're having about disabilities. So a genre of music that I very much enjoy listening to is bluegrass. Don't know if you have listened to a lot of bluegrass, but bluegrass instruments are, there's the guitar, there's the mandolin, there's the fiddle, but there's also the banjo. And I love listening to the melding of those, but I just love listening to the banjo. So I went to a music festival. It's called Gray Fox. It's held once a year in the Catskills, and it's a bluegrass festival. And I was watching the headliner band, and they had the Jumbotron up, and so I was noticing what was unusual is that the banjo player was not, in bluegrass, people take what they call breaks, which is where they pick their tune and all the focus is on you, on the banjo. So I was noticing that instead of holding the banjo like from underneath the way you would expect to see somebody play, he actually was holding his hand over the neck of the banjo and playing his, sort of, if you can see my fingers kind of like this. And I couldn't understand why he would do that. And do you know why he was doing that?
Why was he doing that?
He didn't have any fingers. And after the show, I looked him up, and you could look him up too, and there's actually more than one person, but if you look up banjo player no fingers, this guy will come up, and you can watch him play. He's absolutely amazing. And up until then, I had always wanted to learn how to play the guitar, but it kind of hurt. It hurts a little bit on the tips of your fingers, and it stopped me much. And I had a moment. I said, Liz, you have fingers. You know, here's a guy who's playing on the headliner band at the front of this group of hundreds of people, and he doesn't have fingers, and he's playing the banjo, which is a much harder instrument to play anyway. And how life sometimes comes together. I had a friend who had a ukulele. He said, you should play the ukulele. He lent me his. I started to learn, and that was many years ago now, maybe 10. Thoroughly enjoy it. Everyone is musical. If you don't think you're musical, you probably were told at some point that you were not musical, and you should go back in time and tell those people to get lost. And just know that disabilities or not, musical ability or not, you can be and enjoy and experience music, and it's a lot of fun. And if you're in New York City, come find me and I'll teach you how.
Yeah, well, next time I go to the Big Apple, I'll have to look it up so you can give me some music lessons, absolutely. When Wolfe reflects on her legacy, these are the thoughts that come to mind.
Am very, what's important to me is that people feel empowered. And I want to make sure that people know that, just like with the music that I was just describing, that everyone has the ability to create what it is that they want. And you just may not have the knowledge yet. And that's what I do with my coaching clients. I help people to create that vision, have that plan, get past those mindset barriers. And so I am very interested in helping people do that. I have a lot of online trainings that people can access on my website. I don't know if you noticed, but my last name is Wolfe, and I grew up on a sheep farm. So not everybody makes that connection. But my last name has an E, so you can find me online, lizwolfecoaching.com. And please feel free to several free trainings on there. You can also sign up for a free business strategy session with me, and I'm very happy to talk to you about any of those mindset barriers or anything that would have you want to create any place you feel stuck. I can help you to get unstuck.
Well, fabulous. Liz, I really was looking forward to having the privilege of your time today to talk to you about your journey in business. And I want to really thank you for being here today to share your expertise and vision on how we can all build abundant businesses. It's great to see you, and thanks for the time. It's most appreciated.
Thank you for having me on. Thank you for everyone for listening.